Hey there, welcome to episode 128 of the Cafe Genius Impresarios audio program. I'm your host, Dan Hugo. We are recording this at 1:52 in the morning on Friday, August 8th, 2025. Why so early? Well, I'll tell you, when the internet goes down, not the whole internet, just my access to it, it's a good time to create some audio content, I think. So I've written the show. It has 2,246 words all told in the notes. So what better time than without the internet to unleash my latest thoughts on today's title and topic, Destination Known. If you are not familiar with the Cafe Genius Impresarios audio program, first of all, Cafe Genius is an effort that I've been driving for a couple of years now, since January of 2022, to focus on, examine, investigate, better understand the entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem of the Greater Vegas area. That has included such things as the Pitch Workout Room, the Pitch Mingle events, Genius Roundtable, the Meetup Collaboratory to discuss making and organizing and executing on better meetups. That has yet to bear fruit. Actually, all of these things are in a questionable state, but most importantly, a serious look at the entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem and those participating in it. Those are the impresarios. Cafe with two F's, an homage to Cafe Centro, unfortunately no longer with us in the San Francisco Bay Area, formerly located in South Park, an actual park, very near the then AT&T ballpark, and before that the Pac-Bell ballpark, yeah. Currently known as the Oracle ballpark. Some baseball being played there now and then. Genius, named after an homage to the Genius lunches we used to have in the downtown project days. I was more of a spectator, but often invited to chime in and to, be a part of discussions about who was working on what, the gossip, the lay of the land, and so on. The Genius Lunches may make a comeback one day. This is a part of the second startup scene that I'm attempting to drive, but that's already been a topic for a different episode previously. Finally, impresario, spelled with two S's, of course. Those are the people making it happen, or trying to make it happen. People making it happening? Maybe, depending on your how intensely focused you are on grammar. So, today's episode, Destination Known, is a look at our innovation destination. Hopefully, wherever you found this audio program, you're able to locate the episode description, which contains the show notes, including a brief summary that I will read to you. And the episode links, 3 of them are the same as usual, although I am rejiggering these various links. So I'll get to that in a second. And then one link, which you may have heard of before, or maybe if this is your first time listening, maybe you haven't. Well, I'll leave that for you to decide. So let's get on with it so we can get through it and I can try to get back. I can't really do anything. It's my cable modem is telling me it's trying to retrain and reacquire a solid connection. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Surely this episode will be posted eventually. It's only 1:55. So let's get to it. The summary of today's episode: the visitor and convention numbers for our Destination Oasis in the desert are off. And this is just making the mainstream press beyond Nevada, as in it wasn't really making the news so much more recently. There have been other things more interesting, perhaps. And even beyond the U.S., these are harbingers for international and domestic tourism, both quite important to the Greater Vegas economy. ... The links for today's episode, the same 3 host links. Buy Dan a coffee if you like. No obligation to. You don't have to spend any money. www.buymeacoffee.com/Dan Hugo. That is my freeform profile page on which you will find links to all of my various audio programs, different projects, some actual affiliate links to some coffee beans and some other products. Those are labeled as affiliate links. So if you want to take part, I don't believe any of those will cost you anything extra. But hey, you can lend your support to the show just by clicking on some of those links if you want. Again, no pressure. And do note that I've recently, as in a couple of hours ago, and the update actually was while I still had an internet connection. I have added YouTube links for all of my audio content that has them. So if you'd like to listen to any of my audio programming through YouTube podcast posts are all current. Uploads took a day or two, but all of my audio programs are now available on YouTube at respective YouTube channels. And I finally made Apple Podcast submissions so that these are all available also via whatever Apple iTunes, Apple Podcasts, however people consume those, through Amazon Music and Spotify, of course, and maybe more coming, who knows. So you can check out links to those or find the Spotify creator profile pages with the various links to other feed locations and all that. I won't focus too much on this during these programs. I will probably provide updates on what is the next link, Buy Me an Update. buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo/posts. You heard my voice crack a little bit there. I'm enjoying my allergies overnight, as usual. buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo/posts. You will find the micro episodes, what do I call it? Micro casts of the Buy Me an Update audio program, 5 minutes or less. Goes down each of the week previous topics for the various audio productions that I publish, and then any news and announcements upcoming. So that's usually where I would point out the addition of the YouTube channels and whatnot. So you can always look there. The ko-fi.com/DanHugo/posts for the Coffee Solo audio program. ko-fi.com. The hyphen is the key next to the 0 on most keyboards, I should say. Keypads on your mobile phones and whatnot. That's up to you to, I don't know. Depends on what you're using. The posts section on ko-fi.com that's basically the only thing I use on the ko-fi.com platform. Coffee Solo is published whenever about whatever. Both Buy Me an Update and the Coffee Solo audio programs used to be published exclusively on their respective platforms for which they were named. Now they each have Spotify creator pages. They are published on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, other places, and YouTube as well. So if you're still having trouble finding my audio programming, you're probably not hearing me say this. Finally, for today's episode, yet again, a link to the LVCVA. That's the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority. LVCVA.com/research, as in learn more about the goings on of our visitors and conventions. The research tab is updated periodically, monthly for previous month visitor data, some other reports and whatnot. I'll get to that in a second. You can look there. Many people are taking a closer look at some of the data that's coming out there. I myself am waiting, which is how we will begin today's episode. And I just took a break there to take a swig of water. And in the interim, my internet connection is back up. So yay, we'll post this for the morning, which you will already have found this episode if you're hearing me say that, which is it's always a good thing. So I am keeping it loose for the moment. In other words, I'm not pouring over data just yet. We are not yet through the summer dip. Usually the summer is a little bit of a challenge in the Vegas area. It just gets hot. It's the desert. And while summer often attracts tourists for, say, the 4th of July, which is true, although it was a little bit slow this year, for celebrity residence performances, weekends away from wherever they are in a place with plenty of air conditioning, that's Vegas. We have no shortage of air conditioning, which is always nice. And so on. It may or may not make sense to pour over the current visitor deficits, so I have not, in actual visitor counts, room occupancy rates, and casino winnings. And by the way, they are not as bad as the other numbers, the winnings, allegedly. And downtown Vegas is doing slightly better than the Strip, which is not, the Strip is not in the city of Las Vegas, by the way. Downtown Las Vegas is. Some people have attributed this to the expense of staying on the Strip. So if room rates are lower in downtown, maybe more people are staying in downtown Vegas rather than staying on the Strip, and they're gambling in the casinos more. These are the sorts of things that I think will take some time to filter through and to analyze. So watching month over month, to me as a casual observer, I don't have a vested interest per se in these, so I'm not poring over them just yet. But I'll also get into the other reason. The reductions thus far appear to be a result of visitors finding the costs associated with a visit to Vegas, including room rates, additional resort and other fees, costs of dining out, other such expenses, participating in events, and so on, all perceived to be, and in many cases actually, higher than they have been in the recent past. Some viral stories about excessive bottled water costs in rooms and unplug fees have not helped. I think it was the Paris resort. There was a headline recently, I unplugged the thing and it cost me $50. It's hard to verify some of the headlines and some of the viral stories, but I can say that some of the fees and room rates and stuff have been a little high. I say this as someone who doesn't hang out on the Strip so much, but just going by what I've read and some reporting from local sources. Add to this a general geopolitical soap opera, including inflammation at scale of relations with Canada, of all places, which may have led to a substantial change in Canadian visitor sentiment for the entire United States, and so a general reduction in tourism from our neighbors to the north, and an apparent reduction specifically in visitors from Canada to the greater Vegas area. And normally Canada is, there's a direct path between all of Canada and Vegas. So probably a lot like Hawaii. A lot of people from Hawaii visit what is known as the Ninth Island. So I don't know if this is I don't know if the Great White North makes any sort of references to Vegas as being the warmer, the warmer South. I don't know what they call it. I don't know if there is any comment on that. Visitation from Canada is normally pretty solid though, but we really need to wait for the data to settle out, see what's really happening. Actual sentiment from people who would have visited but have not would be interesting. I don't know how reliable any of the collection of data along those lines has been. So yeah, we'll see. It remains to be seen, I think. I'm going to wait not only to see how the summer data settles out, but also the next section. And then there were tariffs. So talk of tariffs and initiation of multiple trade wars between the U.S. and just about all of the countries on the planet had been raising concerns in just about all corners of the U.S. economy since they were announced on April 2nd of all days, 2025, the so-called Liberation Day. With few exceptions, they have been delayed, renegotiated, or allegedly renegotiated, and re-threatened variably for all of the countries, pretty much all of them. And in particular, two of the more important and longer-standing partners in global trade, the United States and Canada and Mexico, for whatever reason, have been whipped around quite a bit. This did not help at all with consumer and thus tourist or potential tourist sentiment, possibly contributing to the reduction in visitation to the United States from Canada. Let me fix one minor typo there in my notes. I don't really publish my outlines. I could, I guess, but I do like to try to catch these typos because they sometimes confuse me. So reduction in visitation to the U.S. from Canada, possibly also from Mexico, and this has had an impact on visitation to Las Vegas, of course. You got to pass through the United States to get to Vegas at the current time. Maybe this will change at some point. As of August 7th, which is yesterday, as we are recording this, so it's now 2:07 a.m. on Friday, August 8th. So it's been it's whatever actual time zone they implement. Say it's been 24 hours. Since the tariffs are now in effect, at least for the moment, with already growing concern about inflation, or more specifically, the impact of what is an import tax on consumer prices, or what people actually pay for the products imported to the U.S. with tariffs attached. As Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, has finally admitted on the record, tariffs are paid by consumers on the import side, not by the exporting countries, as some might have you believe. Tariffs are not a new thing. They are also not a good idea. This was in Rolling Stone magazine where I saw this headline and quotes and an interview and whatnot. I will leave it to you to track that down. I don't know how reliable you would label Rolling Stone. The take home, whatever direction, whatever direction month over month, tourism has been headed up until now, or up until yesterday. August 7 marks a potential inflection point where a closer look may need to be taken at the tourism situation. It is entirely possible that the numbers will look worse, with fewer visitors and less money spent by the visitors who do make the trek to the Oasis, that's here in Vegas. Local and non-local news coverage has been mentioning room specials at resorts, fee reductions or suspensions. Those are resort fees that are often ridiculous. The garbage fees, I think, is how the wording was in the Biden administration's attempts to remove those. And of course, that's no longer the case. So garbage fees exist once again. All-inclusive package deals to set reasonable and known costs for an outing. In other words, you can say, I'm going to spend a fixed amount of money for an all-inclusive deal, and then you can plan accordingly, and those are attractive options many times, and so on. So this material change in how many individuals and families, not to mention small businesses and even large businesses, will respond to the real rollout of tariffs may be a question yet to be answered, an impact yet to be felt and measured, which is again why I myself am holding off on poring over this tourism and convention data, because I think it's going to take another change, or I don't know if it'll take a dive, but it's going to change over the next, month, 2 months, the remainder of the year, for years. Who can say exactly? So I'm at least going to give it about 2 months. So I'll probably start taking a serious look at this stuff in October, November, to see how the summer really settled out, and then see what sort of impact global tariffs are having. And of course, by then, who knows if global tariffs will still be in effect? Who knows? Who can say? Who knows? What about conventions and sports? Maybe those can affect a rescue. The Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority publishes data on a rolling basis and with summary and analysis, data and reports and so on. So you can get started at that research link at the top of this episode that I mentioned now, and the link is provided if you can find those. It's lvcva.com, Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority.com/research. Now, I am very explicitly not poring over the data just yet, as I've already mentioned, because there is too much room for argument, conjecture, rationalizing, and so on. Feel free to have a look, but keep in mind the potential for some change, minor or drastic perhaps, based on the now implemented tariff schedules. This may impact convention attendance for any number of reasons on an individual basis or level. Layoffs could happen, family impact of rising costs in general, business cutbacks. Maybe they won't be sending so many people to attend trade shows or to work in their booths and so on. So who knows? And on a business level, the event spending may be reduced, even canceled. There may be a few. Now, I will reflect on the CES 2021 event, for example. I'm sorry, 2022. 2021 was actually virtual. So so nobody showed up. 2022, and I posted on Mastodon that 2026 could be worse than 2021, but that would be interesting since it was not an in-person event. But anyway, so CES 2026 could be a return of CES 2022, which was the first in-person return after the pandemic lockdowns. It was pretty dismal. Normal attendance, they tout a figure of around 180,000. I believe for CES 22, it was closer to 40,000. There were actual concrete slabs visible through the carpeting where booths were just canceled, and they pulled up everything and they just left it as a blank carpet-less rectangle. There were a lot of those, and there was a lot of room to move around. So CES 2022 was definitely a sight to behold. So we'll see. We'll see what happens starting yesterday. I am recording this episode on day 2 of DEF CON 33, which continues. It started yesterday on the 7th. There are some events that are simply connected to Vegas, and that is one of them. CES 2026 is another of these, but coming in January, of course. So we'll see what happens between now and then. There's Mobile World Congress in October, NAB, the National Association of Broadcasters show coming up, various non-tech shows around firearms, pizza branding, pizza, branding. And the list is long, but is it long enough? That remains to be seen. To offset the tourism woes, add in the third annual Las Vegas Formula One race in November, along with other professional sporting events, with our Raiders and Golden Knights, which are very popular, and you have plenty of reasons for people to visit, if they do. Here is a question that I myself cannot answer today. If the economy of Greater Vegas is at risk due to reduction in tourism and potential reductions in convention-related visitation, or visitations, not to mention sports-related, is a systematic approach taken to address this, or is capitalism the word of the day? In other words, if there is a plan, capital P, and I don't mean central planning, I don't mean orders from the top, but I do mean a general plan, like here's the data, here are projected impacts on different actions. If we work together, we can improve our situation. So, make your capitalist decisions, but be aware of how they will impact the, rising tide lifts all boats, so to speak, but nobody's going to give any orders about boats taking any actions. So, or maybe there does need to be central planning. I don't know. I don't know how the county commissioners or how the offices of economic development or the LVCVA or the LVGEA, the Global Economic Alliance, which is a public-private entity that advises on the economy. Anyway, so there's a lot of opinions. I'm sure they're all floating around. I don't know who's giving advice, who's giving orders, who knows. Fee reductions and lowered room rates are not universal. So, for example, it's whoever wants to take that action, they have or they have not. It seems to be based on individual business decision making, and this is totally fine. But messaging may work against these efforts. For example, if the still high rates get the attention over the deals. So if you have an all-inclusive deal, or I think it's Resorts World has dropped fees for the summer. I think they'll return in September, I think. Those may they may not get any attention. They may not get any press if everybody's excited about, a $65 water bottle or a $50 unplug fee or whatever, right? So messaging, I guess that's the LVCVA's responsibility. So on top of all this, or in light of all this, I suppose, my long-standing suggestion is one you probably have heard before. If you've been listening to this audio program, if this is your first time, welcome. You're about to hear my about 10 years old idea. I first proposed this to Zach Miles at UNLV when he was just a lowly tech transfer cog in the system, before he departed for Utah and then returned to loftier roles in the Office of Economic Development here at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. I called it the Fusion Center back then. I have mentioned it before in more than one episode of this audio program, and I'm going to summarize it again here. Vegas cannot change gears overnight, and this was a notion I posited a decade ago. It's still true today. But resources such as those at the university and elsewhere could become a part of what we might call an asset map. Asset map is a common term for this, so I'm not inventing anything here. Available under some arrangements to visitors in particular vertical areas. In other words, not everyone would be using university resources, for example, but, the right circumstances, the right visiting entities might have access for particular use cases and so on. This was in the context of a discussion from a decade ago. So in the interim, there are things like the tech park that is still under construction. There are some other resources that have come online or become available. So some pieces of an asset map may have been filled in if only there was a place that this is maintained. I've talked about this before, and it will become a topic of conversation again in the future, so we'll leave that there. In other words, if startups and small businesses, which the LVGEA would like to, that's the Global Economic Alliance, would like to attract to the Greater Vegas economy, that's their stated goal, is to especially draw small and large businesses, startups. It's not clear to me that they're actually trying to attract those in earnest. So the startups and small businesses, though not in that order, they would love to have those visit and move to the Greater Vegas area. They could, for example, execute innovation sprints. Now, if they visited here, execute innovation sprints, or perhaps what some might call internal hackathons, to make use of the time on the ground here in Vegas. This was my suggestion before the work from home movement in the pandemic lockdown era. And while the return to office movements have been popular and troublesome in some cases, there are certainly cases where all employees and contractors and vendors are not co-located for a particular company or effort. Maybe it's more than one company involved. Why not travel to Vegas for occasional proximity? In other words, no matter where you are in the world, bring your team together in Vegas, a city built for that. I will interject. I'm going to interrupt myself. This is not part of the existing word count for my notes. But I presented this in the context of 10 years ago when I first started working for Intel. I actually went and met some of the team when they had the Intel Sales and Marketing Conference, ISMC, Intel Sales and Marketing, I think it's conference, which is essentially global sales and marketing people working for Intel Corporation all came to Vegas. They would do this every year, and they would spend, I think it was a week, brushing up on current products, learning in a sort of an internal trade show format what the newest products were in different groups, sales strategies, marketing messaging, and so on, and some hands-on exercises and whatnot. So I attended sort of a gather, I didn't go to the actual show. I technically was not an employee yet, but I met the people at a gathering at the Encore, I think it was. So it's not a new idea. I'm not presenting some like outlandish novel. Can you imagine if this was possible? It actually happens. So you could actually invite actual companies and actually have them come here for productivity, not to go to trade shows, although they could do that too. And that's something that I would suggest is aligned with scheduling. But they can come here and actually bring people together in person, as people think is a good idea all the time. But I would say you can maintain, and by the way, some companies are simply located in multiple locations. So this is applicable across many scenarios. Why not travel to Vegas for occasional proximity, right? The three legs of the Fusion Center table then, and this was from a decade ago, are these visiting cohorts of people from companies or multiple companies working on collaborative projects, etc. Local resources, so the things that we have here in Vegas, physical infrastructure and tools and internet access and so on. And local talent. Local talent could be small businesses, service providers, consultants, and of course, students progressing to their upper echelon classes or through them, to or through, I don't know, take your pick. If you have heard me mention the clinic program, which I attempted to implement at UNLV in collaboration with their engineering department and Zach Miles, who I mentioned earlier, and others, to bring students into this so-called startup scene of the downtown project, creating a bridge with senior product modifications that could be implemented as sponsored projects from the startups in the downtown project and proximal to that. This could be a model for this interface with visiting cohorts here in town for innovation sprints or similar internal hackathons, etc. Now with added potential for government grant monies for such things. SBIR, SIIR, I think are the abbreviations. Maybe. These are interesting times of late, so who knows? But this is no longer so outlandish a suggestion to collaborate more closely between startup and university/student efforts. Let us look at this scenario today. There has been a slowdown in tourism this year. There are fewer people working on the Strip over year over year. I think the numbers I've seen point to something like, this is from memory, I think it was about 210,000, and now it's down to about 160,000 people working on the Strip, all told, right? Not all at the same time, and possibly within the fun economy in general. And there are varying levels of concern regarding the near-term and longer-term economic impact of the current situation. Now you have some people like MGM management saying, oh, it's not a big deal, this is just a minor dip. And you have other people in panic mode, sometimes making statements with their name attached, sometimes less so. But again, I'm honestly not taking any of it quite seriously just yet. I'm waiting and seeing. I am not a casino manager. I have no stake in this game other than being a resident of the city of Las Vegas. There have been efforts underway for the last 5 years or so in earnest to diversify the economy of Southern Nevada. Now, the efforts actually started, I think, in 2018, or possibly even before that. But most definitely post-pandemic, seeing the Strip completely empty probably was something of a wake-up call for the skeptics. So diversifying the economy of Southern Nevada is important, more important than ever, perhaps, inspired somewhat by the drastic changes we all observed during the pandemic lockdown. Yeah, I think I just said that. And I got to stop reading, or I got to start reading ahead. And general reduction in tourism across the board. So, this year, maybe just another piece of data on an alarming situation, we could say. Or maybe it's just a blip. Maybe it's a collection of circumstances coming together in a negative, with a negative impact. How about that? Despite this aim to diversify the economy, there has been concurrent expansion of the so-called, and recently trademarked, by the way, fun economy. Trademark granted in February of 2025 to the Office of Economic Development at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. They clearly have an interest in the fun economy, literally and figuratively, in the form of professional sports teams and events, including the relocation of the Oakland Athletics team to their brand new and extremely expensive, more expensive than planned at this point, stadium located on the footprint of the recently demolished Tropicana property. It sounds like this is a real thing, maybe. Celebrity entertainment residencies, trade shows and conventions, of course, and the usual marketing and promotion of the greater Las Vegas destination. And by the way, Las Vegas is still a destination. It's somewhere ranked in the top 5, I believe, around the planet of brand recognition, if you like. So when you say, and I can attest to this personally, when I was traveling on behalf of Intel to various places around the world, when I said I was from Las Vegas, there was instantly, I know Vegas. I've heard of Vegas. I've seen the pictures and so on. At the same time, there are those diversification efforts underway to grow, and you can go to the LVGEA website. I've talked about this in a previous episode, to grow manufacturing, biomedical, media production, and that was the so-called Hollywood 2.0 efforts, which failed in their second pass-through legislative session. So maybe next time in 2 years, we'll see. Yes, our legislature meets only every 2 years. And of course, the assertion that the greater Vegas area is to be, or might already be, the next Silicon Valley. I've already gone on at length about this. If you know already my views on this, great. Not going to happen anytime soon. I'll summarize it that way. Otherwise referred to as the global innovation hub that rivals the San Francisco Bay Area, I have read in some cases. It's easy to type those things. I have referred recently to the way Austin transitioned its culture to a tech economy and how that's going. If you have not heard that episode, I'll simply say, not great. Not great for the culture that used to be there, for the employees that were priced out, for the quality of life. If you need to get some sort of an opinion on that, you can hear what the various comedians who picked up and moved from the Southern California area to Texas, to the Austin area. Their opinions are both humorous and vitriolic, to say the least. So my Fusion Center, also known as the Innovation Destination Proposal, now I refer to it that way, is to lean in on the infrastructure that already exists, including the former Enron internet backbone infrastructure owned today by Switch, and some of those resources as they have developed over the last decade. Biomedical manufacturing, media production, not to mention all the possibilities with automated vehicles and the up-and-coming artificial intelligence focus, which actually may trail the bubble, but that remains to be seen. For inclusion in our asset map, we should actually put that together, which is something Cafe Genius is working on, of course. Maybe Vegas, the family-friendly maybe Vegas is the family-friendly, if I can speak, hello. Maybe Vegas is the family-friendly epicenter of innovation sprints, of remote worker convergence, of temporary co-location for proximal interactions. No longer do you need to leave the family to spend a week in the office. We're all going to Vegas. I think there's got to be a National Lampoon movie version of that. Wally World, Vegas, kind of the same thing. So how could we proceed now that it's the present day? A decade has passed since my first suggestion of this to Zach Miles. Today we have more rooms to occupy, more resources to merge into that fictitious asset map. And I will say Clark County has tried to generate an asset map. I don't think they're maintaining it, and it wasn't really, it was more hype and marketing than utility. I'm thinking of it as an open data set, so to speak, and more desire to actually be all of those things people have been posting to LinkedIn for the last 3 to 5 years or so. If we take the existing convention and trade show calendar and the big Rolodex, it may be time for some outreach to companies large and small with this invitation. Quote, bring your remote employees and their families from wherever they are, far and wide, to fabulous Las Vegas, capital FLV. Work during the day, play at night, build teams and success, then return home as usual until next time, or something like that. And if anybody wants to take that, you can have it. Normally, room rates are raised for the big events. CES, they are ridiculous. Formula One, outrageous, rich person packages. And by the way, they were ultimately reduced as the event approached because people were not spending that money. We'll see how it goes this year in November. Plan room blocks at attractive prices to encourage high occupancy that coincides with relevant events. Rather than having event participation go down as cost reduction measures, have it go up by offering deals to those who should be cost reduction measures by companies. Have it go up by offering deals to those who should be proximal to those events. In other words, have small and large companies plan their remote worker convergence during innovation sprint weeks or 2 weeks, bring their families and have their events coincide with relevant conventions and trade shows and so on, so that they can kind of get the most bang for their buck. And at the same time, you can smooth out occupancy of various rooms. This would take some sort of collaborative pricing, not collusion. I'm not saying collusion, but I am saying try to make an attractive offer to companies to say, hey, instead of thinking about this later, we have plenty of rooms. We have a trade show going on that fits your vertical. Why not bring your company to Vegas or a bunch of people from different locations, disparate employees from distal locations? Let's be proximal. The pitch is this: rather than attending a trade show and making that time less than well spent, which is sometimes the case if you speak to the employees that come to trade shows, whether they're working in a booth or attending on behalf of their employer, they usually find it a frustrating time. They want to arrive, do their thing, and get out of town as quickly as possible. That's unfortunate. There's so much to do here. Turn those visits into productivity engagements for all involved. Bring your staff together from different locations and from different focused verticals, and be productive while in town, and then make it fun for family as well, which Vegas has spent a lot of time and money doing. This is no longer a place for 21 and older, even though for some odd reason, local people still plan events that way. Trade shows and conventions might be a drudgery for some. Make them great again. I hear that is going well in general. Make trade shows great again? I don't know. But this is unlikely. I have found in my 12 years in Vegas, and that is as of August 1st, so 12 years officially, 12 years and 7 days today. Although about 2 weeks longer unofficially, I actually kind of arrived in town in the middle of July and started looking around for where to live, what to do, etc. That novel ideas are hard to push through. That's what I've discovered over my 12 years. If I were a wealthy Silicon Valley refugee, I was not wealthy when I got here, but I was a Silicon Valley refugee, and I actually did get a lot more traction when talking to people 12 years ago than I do today. Or if I had some celebrity, or both, would have been even better, of course, I might get the attention of someone who actually cared. But I've found in my travels that most people here in positions to make these sorts of decisions already have their friends around them. They have their groupthink to lean on, and they know more than me. I think they tell me as much. At least that is what they tell me. And who am I to argue? I really got to read ahead when I'm making these off-the-cuff quips. So yeah, I don't get a lot of traction with people when I say such things because my ideas don't align with what the group thinks. Groupthink is the thing here in Vegas. I continue to be concerned about whether a systemic approach, this should be systematic. I always do that. Systematic. A systematic approach could work, not sacrificing capitalist pursuits, but at least coordinating information and impact awareness. I kind of referred to this earlier. If Formula One races benefit a few but damage a few more small businesses, lawsuits, you can check into that yourself. I've already covered some of this in discussion. I'm not really reporting news. I refer to news reports. But generally speaking, Formula One was not great for everyone. Lawsuits. Is meeting an overall goal, would that be possible? Is Formula One doing that? Or would some increases in planning and communication help? Would more talking help? Same goes for focus on Hollywood 2.0, which is not going to happen anytime soon, apparently. Not from a tax and incentives perspective, which are essential, versus drawing more consumers of the existing fun economy in all of its shiny facets. So do you want to focus on Hollywood 2.0, which is going to be more of an uphill climb for a longer period of time, perhaps? Or lean more heavily into the fun economy, and all the infrastructure that already exists today? I continue to observe this crazy place from the ground, looking up at the chaos through my rose-colored glasses, as I am wont to say of so many circumstances, and most definitely of the Greater Vegas entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem. Chaos is opportunity, and there is an overwhelming abundance of opportunity here. And that is what I have to say about that. I don't know if it's all I have to say about that, if I may quote, if you know, you know. So, but that is my take. I think the current tourism picture is going to get weirder before it settles out. So again, I'm personally not looking at the numbers so closely. I'm listening to the news. I'm reading the headlines and the articles. I do actually read the articles. There's a lot of talk about how it's dead. Vegas is dead. It's never coming back. There's a lot of naysaying, and that's another reason to avoid, picking through the numbers today. I'd rather take a look at those again in about 3 months and see what has unfolded for the summer and where things are heading post-tariff. The tariffs may roll back in a week or a month. They may still be in place 3 years from now. Who knows? Who knows? It's the joy of our current, whatever we call our political situation. But that's where I'm going to leave it for now. I remain optimistic about the chaos being opportunity. I think that is always true. I think whenever there's uncertainty, there's always the possibility of turning that into something. And so that has always been my approach. Have I been successful at it yet? Varying degrees. But as long as there's chaos, there remains opportunity. And that's what I'm leaning into myself. So that's where I'm going to leave it for today. Thank you so much for listening. And I guess I get to post this, so that'll be exciting. Hopefully my internet connection is still up. Let's see what the weather says. Yay, it's still up. All right. Thank you for listening as always. Have a great weekend if you do listen to this on a Friday, but have a great week whenever you listen to it. Take care. Bye-bye.